Do you want to learn how you can turn a regular photo into an amazing statue using Photoshop? Today I will show you exactly that. So, without losing any more time, let's get started. So here we are on Photoshop. We will create a new file. You can go ahead and copy those values. Next, we will place our subject in the document. The first task is to remove the background. For this, I will use the pen tool. Although you might find quick selection or select subject tool easier, I found the pen tool to be the most precise and effective method. After selecting our subject, I will mask out the background and duplicate our layer. I will remove the mask from the layer below to keep it as a backup. The other layer will be converted to a smart object, allowing us to make changes and modify in the future. Next, I will select our image, adjustment layer, and shadows and highlights. Feel free to copy those values I use for my subject, but remember the optimal settings depend on your subject's lighting. The goal here is to reduce the shadows to bring them closer to the highlights, achieving a balanced look without excessive contrast. The next effect that we are going to apply is the camera raw filter. In this editing section, I will choose the black and white option and navigate to the black and white mixer to adjust the values. My aim is to achieve an edit with less contrast. I will also decrease the clarity in the texture slightly, but also the details. Our next step is to remove the eyebrows. For this purpose, I will use a new layer and name it Eyebrow Remove. Naming layers or groups helps us keep our project organized. With the layer selected, I will proceed to select the eyebrows from our subject. Using the clone stamp tool, I will then select the area surrounding the eyebrows to remove them. Then I will use the healing brush to refine the edges around the area we worked on. Now I will do the exactly same thing for the other eyebrow. With this step completed, our next is to add shadows to enhance realism. I will create a new layer, naming it Eyebrow Shadows, and select a dark grey color to paint under the eyebrows. This step aims to simulate the shadows that the eyebrows would naturally cast, adding a three-dimensional effect to the image. By selecting various shades of grey, you can add depth and dimension to the eyebrows area. Now that we are done adding the shadows, we will do exactly the same by adding highlights. I will create a new layer that I will name it Eyebrows Highlights. On this layer, we will apply highlights over the shadows, specifically in areas where we envision the eyebrows would naturally reflect light. Try choosing different shades of grey so that you give a more realistic effect. Now that the eyebrows are complete, we will move on editing the eyes. Go ahead and create a new layer, naming it Eyes. I will begin by making a rough selection around the eyes. Utilizing different shades of grey, I will create shadows and highlights to enhance the eyes. The highlights will be placed in the middle, while the shadows will surround them, achieving a three-dimensional effect. We will proceed to edit the other eye, applying the same technique but slightly darker shadows. This adjustment is necessary to match the original photo's lighting, where the shadows appear darker there. Now that we have completed the eyes, let's go ahead and double-click our Smart Object layer to proceed with adjusting the hair. I will use the Smudge tool to manipulate the hair, making it resemble the smooth textureless appearance of a statue hair. Attempt to create swirl patterns with a brush to mimic the appearance of a hair on a statue. Our next step is to remove some details from the skin. For this I will duplicate my layer, I will head to Filter, Stylize and Diffuse, and I will click Anisotropic. I will also use the pen tool to create some crispy edges on my subject. Let's use again the Smudge tool to make the ideal statue-like finish. Adjust the Smudge tool strength to around 20. This setting allows us to fine-tune the skin, removing the texture from it. Be careful though, we don't want to remove the details from the edges, for example the nose. Once you are satisfied, click Ctrl S to save the smart object and to update it. Now that we are done with the subject skin and hair texture, our next step is to enhance the image with the highlights and shadows. I will add two curves adjustment layers. One will be the highlights that will increase the brightness of the photo and the other will be the shadows, while I will decrease it. On both adjustment layers I will add a black layer mask. This allows us to use a soft white brush to selectively reveal the highlights and shadows where needed. I will focus on adding highlights primarily to the right sides of the subject, including the nose and ears. Adjust the flow of the brush to a low number. I will say around 5 to 20. Now it's time for shadows. I will add them more to the left side where the subject naturally appears darker. We will also add shadows in the hair area, the forehead area, the chin and the neck area. To ensure the image doesn't become overly contrasty, I will adjust the opacity of these layers, slightly reducing to achieve a balanced, visually appealing effect. I will go ahead and play with the blending options, adjust the opacity of the layer and the intensity of the slider. I will carefully add some stronger shadows in the areas where I believe have to be darker and some stronger highlights around the edges of the mouth and nose. I think the before and after adding highlights on our subject looks pretty good. Once you are satisfied with edit, select everything related to our subject and make it a smart object. Now place our subject in the middle, and it's time to integrate our base from the statue. I will include a link in the description for downloading the necessary files for this project. We will then add a mask adjustment layer and use black paint to remove the unwanted areas, seamlessly blending the base with our subject. Now it's time to work on a background. You can choose maybe a solid color or whatever background you want. I choose to go with this kind of background. I will include this also for download. To ensure it complements our subject, a black and white adjustment layer will be added, followed by an exposure adjustment layer to brighten the scene. I will add a black layer mask to our exposure adjustment layer, and with a mist brush I will start painting around my subject, to add some kind of fog and mist around and behind my subject. I will add also a bright and contrast adjustment layer above my background layer, and I will decrease the brightness to a very big amount. And by selecting the mist brush and the black color, I will start painting where I want the light and the mist to come from. And now a very important and crucial step is to add the highlights around our subject. Let's go ahead and create a new layer and change its blending mode to screen. With a brush flow set to around 50, carefully paint around the subject, focusing on areas where strong highlights naturally fall. This step demands precision as this significantly contributes to bringing the photo to life, emphasizing the dynamic contrast that makes the image stand out. I also added a solid black color background so I can see the contrast from the highlights. I will also use the pen tool to create some crispy edges on my subject. If you find that some highlights that you added are very crisp and not that natural, you can go ahead and use the smudge tool. You can manipulate the flow of the highlight that you painted. The optimal strength of the smudge tool, depending on the area that you are painting, will be around from 10 to 50. By adding as many details as possible, we are bringing our photo to the next level. Here is the before and after. In the next step, we'll be adding a new layer to our project, which I'll name it Shadows. This layer is dedicated to enhancing our statue base with shadows. To achieve a harmonious and integrated look, I will select darker tones directly from our background palette. Now we are moving on a crucial step that will elevate the realism of our skin, adding touch shadows beneath the base of our statue. This detail is to create the illusion that the statue's base is genuinely resting upon the concrete ground. To do this, we will add a new layer beneath our subject layer. I will select a very dark shade of grey, and using a soft brush, I will carefully paint over the area where I envision the statue's base casting a shadow. This technique will help us achieve a lifelike interaction between the statue and the ground, enhancing the overall realism of our composition. I will be scaling down the subject slightly to ensure it fits perfectly within the skin. Now let's add the final touches to our artwork. The first detail we will add is mist in front of the subject to give our scene more atmosphere. We will create a new layer above our subject layer, and with the mist brush that we used before, we'll paint in front of our subject. To add a more dramatic effect, we will add a new brightness and contrast layer and significantly increase the brightness. To ensure the face only applied where needed, we will add a black layer mask. Then I will use the lasso tool to make a rough selection around the top of our subject. I will grab a soft brush, set it to white and gently paint over the selected area. Press Ctrl-Alt-Shift-T to merge everything in a new layer. Now we will add the final touches. I will add a marble texture over our subject to give it an extra layer of depth and realism. After scaling and placing the texture, I will change its blending mode to multiply. I will add the layer mask to our texture layer, and with a soft brush set to black, I will gently paint over the areas that I want to remove. Doing the same as before, I will add a new texture and I will change the blending mode to multiply. This ensures that only the texture and the cracks show up. I will position and scale my texture layer and I will add the layer mask. With a soft black color brush, I will paint the areas that I want to remove. For our last step, we will elevate the entire composition using the Camera Raw filter for a polished finish. First, press Ctrl-Alt-Shift-E to bring everything together. With this layer selected, navigate to Filter and Camera Raw. We will start by adding some contrast to make our image pop. Next, we will enhance the texture and clarity, giving our scene more depth and detail. We will also use the Dehaze tool to clear up the atmospheric distortion, ensuring our artwork looks crisp. From the color grading section, we will reduce the shadows and increase the highlights. And the last adjustment will be the details. I will increase the sharpening. And that's it for today. Here is the before and after. I hope this tutorial has inspired you to experiment with your own photos and to see the potential for transformation in the everyday. If you want to learn how you can take it to the next level and create something like this, please write me in the comments. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. If you did so, please hit that like button, share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe for more creative content. I hope I see you next time.